All right, boys and girls, here we are again. Another episode of Surviving Hollywood podcast. I'm Johnny Ray Diaz.
I am Aaron Arnold.
I am Austin Arnold.
And we just sat down with an amazing casting director. She's casted tons of probably your favorite TV shows. Cara Chute Rosenbaum. She's done The Mindy Project. She's done Last Man on Earth. The League, which is one of my favorite shows. She's also worked on JUMANJI, and she's doing, she literally has done amazing TV shows, big features, just all the cool stuff that you want to be involved in basically as an actor.
She was a great get. For the pod.
Something was cool was that two of our former guests, one an actor and one a director, she was worked with to some extent or another. Like one of a director, worked on something she cast, and she actually cast an actor in Stuber, Renee, if everybody remembers Renee. We get into it in the podcast, but.
What I liked is just the fact for our audience out there, this podcast is basically three actors are getting information from a casting director from three actors' point of view. So all our questions are sort of relayed with this, with the self-tape when you're in the room. How they choose the actors that they end up choosing, and just stories through her eyes from an actor's questioning point of view. So if you like that, you're going to like this episode. And I was telling these guys before this intro, I really feel that my booking ratio is going to go up slightly because it just demystified the whole casting. I'm serious.
That's what you want. That was the point.
She's agreed to bring us all in for an audition after this, right? No, that never happened. I know it didn't happen. All right, anyway. This is great for all you actors out there, even your filmmakers, the whole process of working with producers, directors, all that. I think it's all relevant. So you guys should enjoy it. It's going well. I just wanted to get, for complete clarification, it's Cara or is it Cara? Cara. Okay.
I knew it.
Because I was I was thinking about it and I'm like, I don't want to mess this up. You know what I mean? But I'm sure you get it a lot.
Well,
I do.
We were going to have you start with a slate, but.
Yeah, my name is Cara Chute Rosenbaum. I'm 5'4". I'm here in Los Angeles.
Nice.
Booked. You booked it.
Done. What's going on, team?
Thanks for coming on. We're just kind of hanging out, obviously. How are you holding up in this whole climate right now?
Oh, it's something, all right. I have a 2-year-old also, so it's been just a really interesting time too. We have a 2-year-old, and we started a major renovation on our house on February 24th.
Oh wow.
So it's been interesting, to say the least, going on here. We were we been saving up for years to do this big project, and it's still going on because we had to take quite some time off and go down to a one-man crew and all this stuff. So it's just been it's weird for everyone for different reasons, and we're all just surviving, not thriving, I feel like, but doing the best we can.
Well, good thing you're on Surviving Hollywood. It's not Thriving Hollywood.
Hey.
She has the secrets.
Hey.
Is the industry opening back up from your point of view? Have you heard anything?
No. People have contingency plans, and we can talk about this, when you guys want to roll too, but I've heard that people have different contingency plans, if they start in August, this is how they would roll it out, and if they start in October, this is how they would roll it out, and if they start in January, this is how they would roll it out. But these are all hypothetical plans, and nobody really knows how they would roll it out. So it's all sort of make-believe, and there's a couple crews that I've heard of that have gone back to shooting in Europe and things like that. And I think that will really be a test of how it goes. But I just don't know that anything is safe. Did you hear the story about the Germany opening up their soccer league and what happened there?
No.
Germany, who's handled this crisis amazingly, decided they were going to go back to playing soccer, and they put, you know, all these quarantines and all these things in place. And after a week of play, 2 people on a team tested positive for COVID. One of the managers left the quarantine hotel to like go get like toothpaste or something stupid, so he had to be removed from the team and go into a separate 2-week quarantine. And like they're like, it was just like madness.
Jeez.
So
Yeah.
it's just, nobody knows quite how to handle it and how to be able to, like, you can't quarantine whole sets of people together. That the expense of that alone is crazy, and people have families or kids, and you can't tell them that they can't see their kids and their families. So I don't know, like I wish I knew. It would be, you know, lovely to have some semblance of it, but we're also never privy to this kind of discussion. Somebody just tells us when we're shooting and we say, okay.
But
so
it could
it's so
be
hard.
January from what you're hearing.
It could be anything. It could be anything. I think things like animation will come back quicker, because it's, you know, you can have an actor go in one at a time into a recording booth, or do it from home and sanitize it and whatever, and have animators working separately and stuff like that. And writers I know are right now trying to rewrite their movies to make them smaller, essentially. Smaller shoots, smaller casts, but like, especially as actors, like, you guys aren't able to wear a mask on camera, and you have to be intimate with people, and it's putting yourself right in harm's way. It's really hard. So I don't know.
Yeah, that has to be the most challenging thing, is like you said, like the protocols, like how do you, I mean, I guess at the end of the day, really obviously the only way is like a vaccine, but we're far away from that. So
Yeah.
Would you say eventually they just have to open up and assume the risk? Because like, what else can we do? I don't know.
I mean, I know SAG came out and said no member should take any work. You shouldn't sign any waiver. We're not ready to go back to work. And I think that's very telling. And, you know, our union, the Teamsters, have essentially said the same thing. I don't know. It's just so hard, because for what we do for a living is literally being intimate with tons of people all day, and you don't know where those people have been, where they're going, who they're interacting with. It's an acting profession. And, you know, my husband's a dentist. He's still seeing patients. He's exposing himself every day, and, you know, he's got PPE and a face shield and all that stuff. But like, we're crazy over here. You know, he takes his scrubs off before he comes in the house, and like he puts them in a plastic bag, and like does, like, we just don't know. So it's just freaking weird, guys. Like,
Yeah.
I wish I had a better handle on it.
Yeah. It is really weird. Even talking about the dentist, I chipped a tooth, so I was calling my dentist to go in and get it fixed. And he was like, well, it's going to be a little while, because right now we're only seeing one person a day. And I was like,
damn.
All right, well.
How much pain are you in?
I mean, luckily I'm not in pain, but it's like, I was like, oh, all right, well, it's going to be a little bit, you know, until they figure out, I guess, how to handle things better. It's a small office, and so I don't know.
Johnny, it might be best to switch up to Cara's husband.
Yeah.
If you want better.
He's seeing 7 patients a day, so.
That's pretty good, actually. That's pretty good.
Better than one.
I know.
Let me know.
I know. Hey, I might have to hit you up about that. Anyway, yeah, I mean, we've got a lot of questions about the way things are going, but, you know, I'd love to actually kind of talk a little bit about, you know, kind of how you got started and sort of demystify this casting director thing. Because I think a lot of times, sometimes as actors and filmmakers, like, we know who the casting director is, but like, I often wonder myself, how do you even get started doing that? And is that something you always wanted to do? Like, how does that whole process work?
Yeah, so I did not even know this existed. This was like not something that was on my radar. And I came from an acting background. And I very quickly knew that I did not want to be an actor. It just like was not my path, and I wasn't really sure where it was. And after college, I kind of decided that I wanted to be a dramaturg. That's what I decided I wanted to do. It's like, I wanted to go work on Broadway and like research plays and like get into really yummy Shakespeare and you know, all this stuff. And I came out to Los Angeles through a grad program that was internship based, and they were offering all these really amazing internships and kind of like see where you can make it. And I was like, all right, I'll go out to Los Angeles for a semester, and then I'll just like move back to New York to home and start my life in New York. And I never left. I came out here, and my first internship was in the casting office at Criminal Minds with April Webster and Scott David. And I was just like, oh my God, what is this? Like, nobody even explained this to me. Even as an actor, I didn't know this existed. And like, when you're in any BFA program or any acting training school, they don't talk to you about a casting director and what a casting director does. You just know that you audition and you get cast. Like, you don't see that process. There's no casting director that comes into your theater department and works with you or whatever. And so it just really clicked for me in this really magical way, where I was still working with actors and experiencing actors and understanding their beats and their intentions and their moments, and yeah, and literally never looked back. So all my like plans of like, oh, I'll just be gone for 3 months and then I'll be home. And all my friends were like, you're getting an apartment? What are you talking about? So now here we are.
I mean, you just tell people back home, like, guys, it's like 80 degrees. Like, what?
Oh my God, yeah.
It's snowing over there. Why would I want to come back? Like,
Why?
you know.
Why indeed? So yeah.
That's pretty cool. I remember, you know, the Criminal Minds. Were you an associate? You were still interning there, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Were you still sitting in on the sessions then at that time?
Yeah, I was in sessions. I was running camera for the sessions. So it was me and Scott, and Erica Bream was the associate at the time when she was Erica Silverman. And it was the three of us sort of like kind of running it. I was there every day, and it was amazing. And then a few months later, Scott and April had a new series come up and they needed to hire an assistant, and they called me and they were like, do you want to come do this? And I was like, yep. And there you have it. And so I really was lucky that I just fell into it. I otherwise would have never known how to even find something like this. And people don't even take interns anymore because of, you know, all the nonsense with not nonsense, but the Black Swan internship lawsuit a few years ago and all those things. People are terrified to take interns. So it's really hard to break in. It's the same thing as being an actor. Like, you need the resume to get the audition and the audition to get the resume and the Same thing with casting. If you try to get in the door in casting, everybody just wants someone with experience. It's very hard to find the time to train someone because we were moving so fast. Now it's a little different. But before, it was like, you just need to know how to do this job. And the only way you learn is just hands-on.
Would it be a good place to start, be like a reader? Is that how you would maybe start, I guess? Being
a reader is great. The CSA has actually now developed a program to train up-and-coming assistants. They sort of have like a crash course, and I think they're figuring out a way to put this online. But the Casting Society is sort of has a crash course on casting, on all the software we use, on sort of the terminology we use, like sort of what the day-to-day might look like in a feature or a television office and things like that. So that people are taking that really seriously, and when we're looking to hire assistants and we see that, we go, oh, okay, like that's a little bit more interesting, at least to somebody who's never actually worked in an assistant's office or worked in a casting office before. Also, people who have agency or manager experience who sort of are looking to make the jump. A lot of people maybe start, you know, at an agent's office and they deal with the other side, and then they go, you know, I'm really interested in that. And a lot of times, since they already know the one side, it's easier to make the jump to our side. But yeah, it's tough to get in the door.
What kind of, like when you were interning and obviously where you are now, what kind of stuff did you pick up, like watching actors, like maybe some like best practices or some stuff people were doing right, something wrong, like
or bad practices?
Yeah.
I mean, it's the same thing even as like I work now. Like, there are people that come in the room prepared, and there are the people that come in the room and they make excuses. You know what I mean? Like, my whole thing is like, anytime an actor comes in the room and they're like, I'm so sorry, I just got these sides. It's like, no, I know when you got the sides. I sent out sides. Like, you don't have to tell me when you got them. I know you either got them late or I know you either didn't look at them. So like, what you're telling me is you're about to watch a really bad audition. And so like, why do I care about that? You know what I mean? Like, people that come in and they're already setting the bar really low for themselves. Like, it's such a bummer. Or people who come in and they don't really know what they're auditioning for, or what the world entails, or what the tone of the piece is. They haven't taken 2 minutes to Google it or anything like that. You know, little things like that. I think little things like just being a pleasant person in that audition room go a really long way. And that was super evident to me even when I was an intern, to just be able to be like, oh, this person like came in and they were kind and professional and they executed and they left. And that's doing your job as an actor, you know?
I like it. Nice. I just heard a random sound in the background.
Oh, that might be some construction on my house. I can move.
Okay.
If you guys need me to move.
No, that's fine.
Sorry.
It's
I thought this might be the quietest room, but it might not be, so I can move.
So Oh,
Yeah,
no, go ahead. Go ahead. No, sorry. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to jump to, you directed, casting directed 13 episodes of Last Man on Earth, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Casting
So I was the associate casting director on The Last Man on Earth. So we did the first season, and then we did a couple other random episodes where they actually required cast because a lot of that show did not once we are done with it.
And well, we know one of the directors, a friend of the podcast, Payman Benz, who worked on that show. So like, the question is, how closely do you work with the directors for TV?
Well, so for that show specifically, not very closely at all, because there was no guest cast in each episode. So, you know, when there's no guest cast, we have no reason to sort of work on a basis like with the script, with the writer, with the director. All the stuff we were doing on that show was way up front, almost like pilot casting, but you were like dropping series regulars almost throughout the series because we knew what was coming, and that's sort of what they were writing for. So it was more working with like Phil Lord and Chris Miller and Seth Cohen and those people. But otherwise, on a normal episodic that has guest cast, you're working pretty, you know, they're a big part of the conversation. You know, you're concepting with the producer and the director and the writer just to make sure everybody's on the same page about what it is you're trying to accomplish within the episode, what it is we should be looking for, what it is, you know, the tone of what we want, and if there's any specificity to what they're looking for. And then, you know, trying to make that happen while also thinking outside of the box. So like, we can talk to our producer and our director on an episode and they can be like very specific about what they want, but I can also look at that and say like, I know they want this, but I know this one person who maybe doesn't necessarily fit this mold, who would still embody some of these qualities. Let's try it and see if it works. Like, that's part of our job too, is saying like, I know you're saying you want A, but do you maybe also want a little B? Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. You know what I mean? At the end of the day, we all have to like do what's best to service the material. But yeah, you know, we liaise between a lot of different cooks in the kitchen. There's the studio and the network and the director and the producer and the writer and all of this, and we gotta make all of them happy, which is really exhausting sometimes.
Who's the most difficult to work with? Which one is it?
Oh, I couldn't possibly tell you that, and all of them are difficult at one point or another for their own reasons.
Yeah.
Well, and also since a director comes in, you know, a different director each episode, but you're there the whole season. Do you ever get the vibe that like, hey, I know a little bit more than you because I've been here for 7 episodes already, but you know, we're going to work together knowing that?
Yes and no. I think the line producers of TV especially, and the creatives and showrunners of TV especially, like keep all that stuff in line. And when they invite guest directors into their world, they're sort of filling the directors in on how they work and what the world looks like and how it should be. And because we have a constant in them, like, you know, there's like a saying of like, TV is a producer's medium and film is a director's medium too. So like when the director comes in, yes, they have creative control over their episode, but they still have to fit in within the world that the showrunner is creating. So they're always gonna sort of defer to that person in the end and what the vision of the series is, so that each episode doesn't look like it doesn't belong together, you know? But yeah, I think, you know, it's always a creative conversation where you want to collaborate and do the best work and make sure everybody's happy and on the same page in the end. And there's definitely directors I've been with that are on different pages than we are. And there's definitely directors that have been like incredible and just like easy to work with and great. It just totally depends on the project and the role, you know, the context of whatever it is you're doing can definitely inform what's happening.
Yeah. And I know you've worked on a lot of TV, but you've also done like, you know, indie stuff, and you've also done like the big blockbuster movies like Jumanji, things like that. How do all those compare? Because obviously they're different casting animals. You know, do you have a preference, and how do you kind of handle those?
My preference is television. I just love the pace of TV. Every week I have a different script, I have a different episode, I have a different, you know what I mean? Like I have a very clear deadline every week. And with feature, you just have a lot more time on your hands, and you can see the same role for 6 months and then offer it out to somebody anyway. And it's a little more exhausting. One of my favorite stories is I was working on a film a really long time ago, and I mean, we were seeing this same role for so long, and the actor came in and we had run out of sides in the waiting room, and we weren't in our normal office. We were like on site at the producer's office or something, and the actor needed sides, and we didn't have any more, and so I just handed him mine. And he was like, well, what are you going to read with? And I was like, I'm reading this scene for 8 weeks now, homie. I'm off book. Like, I don't need like so like there is like for me, there's a little bit more of a pace with TV that I'm comfortable with and I really appreciate. Not to say I don't love feature. Obviously, I love feature, and it's really exciting to watch those big movies and you know, do all that cool stuff. But each one is a different animal. Indie movies, you know, don't have a money truck to back up sometimes. You have to get creative and find people who are passionate about the material, and or find really good, raw, fresh faces that are gonna, you know, do service to the story. Or with something like Jumanji, you've got a little bit more room to play and people know what it is. It's a known entity, so people are quicker to be like, yes, I want to do that. So it again, it totally depends on what it is you're working on at the time.
So when you get a job to cast, you have to fill this role. What is your process for finding people? Do you know, send out to the agents you work with, or the producers are giving you people, or?
Yeah, so depending on the project, so like if we're just talking about like TV and film, you know, we'll break down the roles, we'll concept with the producers and the directors to see again like what exactly we're looking for. We'll come up with a breakdown that everybody is happy with. Depending on the project, we might have to get approval from a studio or a network or whatever on that breakdown as well, just to make sure everybody's on the same page. And then we'll release that on breakdowns to actors and, sorry, not to actors, to agents and managers for them to submit their clients to. Sometimes producers will also kick in and say, hey, will you read this person? Or like, oh, can you read this, you know, whatever. Oh, I worked with someone. Can you find out who this was? And I just saw this thing. It's totally a mixed bag. And everybody's invited to play, right? Because we're trying to find the one person. So we want to be able to do the work to find that one person. And then, you know, for smaller projects, indie movies, short films, theater, I might release it on Actors Access directly to actors to be able to submit for, depending on what the project is. But generally for the bigger TV and film stuff, it's gonna go more directly to breakdown services and the agents and managers directly.
And like, for example, Aaron and I were twins. We have the same agent, Nancy Chida's agency, boutique, smaller agency. Like, what are the chances? Because I always see, like, yeah, obviously, do you immediately go to the big agencies?
No.
Or you go to the ones you trust? Or
no, I go for the people that are going to be right for the role. If I was only looking at certain agencies, I wouldn't be doing my job well. Like, you want to service the material, not the, you know, that's like, listen, for like a series regular role, like, yes, you're probably going to be seeing more people from WME and Gersh and CAA and those people, but that doesn't mean we don't look at everybody's submissions and we don't look at the credits and we don't look at who's submitted. When I go through submissions, I put everything in alphabetical order and I look through every single one of them. And I put them in alphabetical order because if my eyes start to bleed at the letter L, I can take time, look away from it for a few minutes and then come back to it and make sure everybody's been looked at, because we don't want to miss anything. And if we were only concentrating on certain agencies every time we release something, then we're going to be missing all this unknown talent, for lack of a better word, like people that are up and comers or people that are interesting or people that could be right for a role. And that, again, is our job. Our job is to service the material at hand. So yes, if we're casting for like a major lead in a in a big budget feature, are we probably concentrating more on like the WME clients of the world? Yeah, because we're probably looking for a star name. But if we're going through, you know, guest cast on TV shows, everybody's fair game. It just depends on the role. You have to be right for the role and for the project. And that's always the biggest question people get. Like, how do I stand out in the submissions? And I can't tell you. That's like asking, you know, how do you eat a fairy? Like, I don't know the answer to that.
Do you know?
I don't.
Tell me.
Because like it depends on the role and the context of that role and the context of that project in that world. Because whatever I'm looking for in that time, the next day I could be looking for something different that you could potentially be right for, but the thing before you weren't. So standing out doesn't mean like every time I see your headshot it pops. It just means when I'm looking at the breakdown for the role I'm looking at, that's sort of what works, if that makes sense.
Just out of pure curiosity, because what is your opinion on slate shots? I'm not really a fan myself, but like reps are always like, you got to do this, and I'm like, all right, I guess.
I don't watch them. I hope no one from Breakdance is listening.
Okay.
Okay. I think they're really creepy and weird and like not an accurate depiction of you. And like, I'd so much rather just like watch your demo reel and your work. Like, I don't click on them. And also, I know that they say, I think that if you do a slate shot, it'll go to the top of the submission or something like that.
They always say that. And I'm like, I don't think that's completely accurate.
No, because if I sort it by alphabetical order, you're going to go in alphabetical order.
Right. So it depends on how you sort it. Exactly.
There's a setting to sort randomly. So if you sort it randomly will put people with a slate shot above, but I don't know a single person that randomly looks through submissions at all. Like, that seems like way more work for me to begin with.
Which casting director loves slate shots? That's the one I need to talk to. I'm just kidding.
I don't know. I think they're weird. I want to watch a demo. I don't want to watch it be like, hello.
Obviously quality is best, but preference for length of a demo?
No, I want to click on it. I want it to work. I want it to be your best work. I want it to sell you, period. People ask about splitting them up all the time and clips. My preference as of late generally is comedy demo, drama demo, because depending on what I'm working on, that means I know what I'm getting when I click on your demo link. I found that people that split it up by like project, sometimes I will just defer to the projects I know. So if you have a show on there that like I just don't know, I'm not familiar with, I might not click on it, but that might be your best work to represent you for that role, and I'm never going to see it. So, just have the work on there. I don't know a single casting director that sits there and watches the whole demo reel anyway. We're going to click through it, get an idea, and sort of move on. We're not sitting there watching the whole thing in depth until like you're at like a testing situation where we like really need to sit down and analyze it. It needs to just be a slice of who you are, how you present, how you sound, what you do, and your body, your presence, and your voice, and all that goodness.
Like it.
So I'm a fan of The League. I've always been a big fan of The League. And I know that was one of the shows that you worked on for a while. Mm-hmm. What was it obviously like working on that crazy show? And because it was very improv heavy, that show. So I'm curious like what that audition process was like for that show. And, if you have any great stories of working on that too.
Bananas. So I was a really big fan of that show before I even came to work on it, because I didn't come on to the last couple seasons. It was the most insane, talented, hilarious group of human beings in the entire world. A lot of the time we would just offer out roles on that show, even to co-stars, because they didn't really have scripts. They had ideas of what those episodes were going to look like, and they knew they were going to need a nurse, and they were like, who's a good nurse? And we would be like, look at these 3 demo reels. These are cool nurses we know. And they'd be like, great, go with that one. And if we did have to audition, the scenes in the audition room were improvised. There was no script, there were no lines, there was a vague idea of what we were going to accomplish in a scene, and we would just go. And it was, sometimes it worked and sometimes it did not, and it's truly insane. And I don't even know, by the time those guys got on the set, I never saw a script on any episode, never. I would just get like beat sheets of like what was maybe going to happen.
Sort of. Yeah.
Not even a like traditional formal outline. It would just be like a Word doc of like, in episode 4, Roxanne's gonna go to the store and there's gonna be a girl there. In episode 5, we're gonna need 2 nurses and a football coach. And an episode, like, it was like so all over the place. And we would talk to Jeff and Jackie, the creators of the show, and they would sort of talk us through like what they were thinking and where they wanted to go and sort of types that they were looking for, and we would put together lists and kind of just go back and forth that way. It was bananas. It was so much fun. I've never worked on anything like it.
That is pretty crazy. I mean, it's also kind of cool because it's also creative and free flowing in a way, but also probably kind of weird.
Maddening.
No script. Yeah.
And also very easy to then call the day before and go, oh, you know what? We just realized we're going to need a porn star for tomorrow. Can you get us one? And go,
Seth Rogen. Seth Rogen? Oh, I think he's available.
Yeah, totally.
How did you guys find Jason Mantzoukas? Was he just like, he was part of like the improv crew, right? And then
Yeah, I mean, Jason's been a guy that's been around forever, just being Jason. And again, like I wasn't involved in the original. I didn't come on till later in the league, but Jason's just like sort of just, again, he's just Jason's so hard, and like been one of those guys just in the atmosphere forever. And he just took that character and soared with it.
Yeah, he was my favorite character on the show.
So good.
Generally speaking, if you're not a Jason Mantzoukas type, and like besides
no one is a Jason Mantzoukas.
Exactly. Besides having a quality reel, is there any way for an actor to get on your radar or a casting director's radar? Like, are film festivals or improv shows?
You know, I always say do work worth noticing and you will be noticed. And I know that is the vaguest thing in the world, but it really is true. Like, if you do something that generates buzz, you do something that stands out for you and makes noise for you. It could be something as simple as a viral video or as big as an indie film or whatever it is, but your best work and your most honest work will make you stand out to people. And I also will, like, when I watch TV, even simple little co-stars, I'll see and I'll be like, who is that? I don't know who that is. Like, let me look up that person, because I sort of always have to have an eye out, right? Like, I always got to sort of see people and know what's going on. And I love being able to recognize people, and I love being able to discover new people, and I love all of that stuff. But it's hard. And I know, especially right now when everything is down, everybody feels like it is a race to be productive, and it's not. And everybody feels like, well, I'm not doing anything, so I should be talking to casting directors, I should be talking to agents, I should be getting new representation, I should be getting new headshots, I should be doing all this stuff, And it's sort of like, this time right now is a really bananas time. You have to do the things that are going to fill you creatively and personally and all of that good stuff, and focus on you. And yes, there are opportunities to take advantage of. There are casting directors, opening up their general calendar meeting. There are casting directors doing monologue challenges. There are casting directors offering free open calls or demo reels or whatever it is. But don't feel like you're missing out right now, because we are also all human beings going through a very weird time trying to figure that out. And people forget, we casting directors are all individual people also. Like, something that I say, another casting director can hear and be like, absolutely not, I do not agree with that. Like, we all work very differently. We have different tastes. We have different likes and dislikes and things that we, respond to. And we have different ways of engaging with people too. I'm very open on my social media, others are not. And so you have to respect that. If you were trying to, troll for casting directors on Instagram and you see somebody's account is private, probably don't send them a friend request, So it's, you have to be smart about it. And, but again, in terms of like getting on the radar, just keep doing your best work, putting yourself out there. If you, and feeling like you are representing yourself in your best light. And if you don't feel like you're representing yourself best light, then take an inventory as to why. Do you think you need to have a conversation with your reps? Do you need to update your reel? Like, what are the reasons that you're maybe not standing out to yourself, or you feel like you're not putting your best foot forward out there, and what that looks like? And that's going to be different for everybody, because you are all individual people, even twins.
Hey, nice. And
I wish I had a twin.
and one follow-up on that, like when we are not acting, obviously everybody always has downtime. We create short films and put them through festivals. I know you can't speak for every casting director, but for you, and generally speaking, would you welcome, like, if an actor said, hey, sent you things saying, hey, this film just won an award at this festival, just putting it on your radar, or I got a new piece of my reel. Do you welcome those like emails or no?
People send me that all day. I have my inbox and DMs are clogged with all of that stuff, and I look through it. I really truly do, but I don't often respond to it all, just because the amount of it is very overwhelming.
You can tell us if you don't.
I truly look at everything, really truly, especially right now.
You responded to my message, and here you are. So
it took me a few days though.
Hey, it's okay.
But it's true. Like, I really, listen, like, this is the better version of a postcard, right? Because it used to be like you spent all this money getting postcards printed and sent them out in the mail and just hoped somebody looked at them. This at least is free, the way to engage. You don't have to spend money on postcards, and it's very easy for me to click on a link and actually see your work, instead of being like, oh, he's on this show tomorrow night, but I'm working and I can't watch it, or whatever it is, when you see a postcard. So yes, I welcome that stuff, but again, please don't expect a response from me if you do happen to send me all of these lovely things, because it's very overwhelming. And you know, when you open the door to people to contact you in that way, people begin to feel entitled to your time in a certain way, and they begin to be like, why won't you answer me? Help me, I need help. You know what I mean? And it's like, okay, like it's a really fine line of like, everybody wants to make it, and the numbers are so against you in this business as an actor. We get 4,000 submissions on a role and only one person can get a role. That's some pretty terrible odds. So you know, again, like I was mentioning before about being kind and professional, like there also has to be that on social media as well, and when you're sending things out, and recognizing that as well.
Yeah, I was just kind of thinking about, like, I heard that the open call with, I think it was Bluestein's open call, they had like 60 or 70,000 submissions.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, is there going to realistically watch all those? Like, that's insane.
It's gonna take them years. I mean, I did a monologue challenge a couple weeks ago, and I got over 2,000 monologues, and I'm still going through them. I'm almost halfway through. Erica Bream issued a monologue challenge a couple weeks ago. She got 8,500 monologues. I was talking to her this morning, and she still has 5,000 to go. And she's like, I don't know how I'm ever gonna do this.
Immediately regrets doing the monologue challenge.
100%. It's true though. Like, but again, we're doing these things for a couple of reasons. One, we want to engage in this really weird time, right? We want to keep flexing the muscle, and it keeps us working. It keeps me watching self-tape. So I feel like I'm actively doing something aside running around making sure my 2-year-old doesn't kill herself. Like, I'm doing something active that I love in my career. So it's helping keep that muscle sharp for me as well. But it is a daunting number to kind of go through.
What are the pet peeves for the self-tape? Since it looks like self-tapes are going to be more of a future than they were originally. What are the turn on and turns off for self-tape?
You know, you have to have good lighting and good sound in the self-tape, period. There's no more excuses for that. And that doesn't mean you have to have a ring light, and that doesn't mean you have to have the most expensive lav in the world. You can shoot it on your iPhone. iPhones are really amazing. But like, when I see it in portrait mode and not landscape, like you're holding the phone vertically and not horizontally, I'm just like, oh, because it's never going to upload or encode or look right on any of the software we need. You know, people that frames are way too wide and they're hidden in a corner, or they're way too close and I'm just like seeing up their nose. Just like, you know, keeping it, you know, the regular frame, the regular, you know, landscape, all of that stuff. I also personally, and this is again a personal thing, in the audition room, I don't mind if you hold your sides, but for some reason when I see them in a self-tape, it drives me nuts. And I think it's because when we tape you guys in the audition room, we're very careful to usually crop out your sides. The way you're framed, we don't see them. And so when I watch back any tape from an audition room that I'm sitting in, I don't see them. But when I'm watching them back on a self-tape, I don't know why, it just like makes me crazy. So just keep them out of sight. If you're gonna send me a self-tape, please. If you have to refer down to it, obviously. Like, you can't be 100% off book for every single thing you're doing, but I would prefer they're out of sight. What else? Also, the thing about the self-tape that's really important to keep in mind is when you come into an audition room, I can't turn you off, right? I have to go with you on this journey. And so, but with a self-tape, I can turn it off if I don't like where it's going. And if you don't start off great in your self-tape, but you really warm up into the scene and you crush the end of the scene, I might never get there, because I might just turn it off when the first moments don't work for me. And that sucks. I'm not going to say that doesn't suck, but it's just hard to keep watching. It's especially hard to keep my creatives engaged with things like that. So you really got to make sure you execute the beginning of that self-tape really well, that you're in your moments, you're doing all the things that you wanted to get done. And if you need to edit takes together, don't do multiple cuts in a self-tape. But if you do one very quick, very clean cut in a self-tape, like if you do 2 different takes and you have a great beginning of one and a great ending of another one, find a way to edit that shit together.
Really?
Pro tip.
That's interesting because I never thought about. I always think like, I messed up at the beginning. I can't use that part because it's.
I think about that stuff all the time, but I didn't want to get like disqualified if I like.
It's gotta be like a blink and I didn't notice it. You know what I mean? I can't like have you profile and all of a sudden have your head turned to the right if there's a cut like that. So it's gotta be clean. It can't be abrupt or take me out of it or be like, whoa, what happened there? Or the background changes or something like that. So it still has to feel professional in a way, but it's gotta be like you blink and you miss it almost. But it's totally fine.
Interesting.
You kind of touched on this a little bit at the beginning when you first jumped on, talking about this self-tape world now. Like, we obviously don't know where things are going to go with this whole pandemic and whatnot. Where do you see the future of casting going a year from now, like in studios and productions and all that?
I think we're going to be living in a self-tape world for a very long time. I don't think any of us are going to feel comfortable having hundreds of actors in and out of their tiny little rooms. I don't think you guys should feel comfortable driving from Sherman Oaks to Santa Monica to Burbank, sitting in a waiting room with 40 different actors waiting for an hour. Like, I just don't foresee that happening anytime soon. So I think it's going to be self-taping. What I think might happen with that is I think we're probably going to be giving you guys much more information regarding those self-tapes about how exactly we want them, how many tapes we want them, maybe even clearer character direction that we would have maybe offered you in the room when we don't have you in the room. And I think there's going to be more of an opportunity to redirect self-tapes because we aren't going to be able to have you back live. So if I get a self-tape, I'll be able to be like, oh, this was so close. Can they tape again and do this? Or can the actor call me and I'll talk them through it or whatever. I think there's going to be a lot more of that. But again, these are guesstimates. I don't know. I think they'll be doing things like Zoom and Skype callbacks and recording that way, and maybe having your creative team sign on to Zoom to watch something. But again, I don't know, and I think it will depend on the project. But our creatives have sort of been used to a quote unquote self-tape world for a long time now, because generally when you guys go in, especially for TV episodic, you're just on camera with a casting director, and then the creatives are seeing the tape, right? So they're basically not in the room anyway. So they're kind of used to this format. It's newer for us because they feed off the energy of you in the room and the direction of you in the room and get a vibe of you as a person. We're obviously not going to get that anymore. And we're going to have to do a better job vetting people as well, especially if we don't know them. If they're a jerk, it's harder to tell in a self-tape than it is in a live audition setting. So yeah, I just think self-taping is going to be the way for a while.
I know this isn't... I was going to quick follow up to that. I know this isn't necessarily your world, but what do you think about commercial casting? Because that's always in person. Is that just going to be like?
I don't know. Again, it's not my world, so I'm not really familiar. Yeah. Ooh, that one was loud. Sorry, guys. Is this really distracting? Do you need me to move to a different room?
No, okay? As long as we know what it was, that's
okay. Sorry, it's going to be on the podcast. I'm so sorry. As long as we, what was your question? Commercials. I don't know. The answer is I don't know. I think a lot of it's gonna come down to maybe demo reels and headshots, because a lot of commercials are based on looks anyway, right? So I wouldn't be able to say, well, because I've just never done it. It's not really my world. But I don't foresee these huge open calls anymore, or these cattle calls into La Brea or whatever it is, and everybody waiting around and reading multiple things. It's not safe, and it's not safe for you guys, and you shouldn't. I mean, I can't tell you how to feel, but if I were an actor, I definitely wouldn't feel safe doing that. So, especially because you can't wear a mask. You can't wear a mask if you're on camera. You can't wear a mask. Right. I guess you could wear one in a waiting room, but it's really terrifying.
This is a great pre-interview. Do you guys want to start recording the podcast? Just kidding. JK. Hey, you cast Stuber, right? Casting associate?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Friend of the podcast, Renee, Johnny, how do you pronounce his last name?
Renee Moran.
Moran. Love.
Yeah, friend of ours, yeah.
He did the podcast. So our audience, knows of him a little bit. How did that casting go? Do you remember specifics?
Yeah. Oh my God, yeah. That role was really hard to audition. I'm gonna move you guys. I'm so sorry. Hang on. This is just too much for me. I'm gonna stop my video so you don't watch me run through my house. Just hang on.
Oh, I love the photo.
Thank you. Hang on. Sorry. I need the baby monitor also. Hang on.
That kind of sounded like as if your husband was drilling on somebody.
Whoa.
There it goes.
As if on cue.
Oh man. All right, let's see if this is better. Hang on. Sorry, guys.
No worries.
Collect your thoughts on Renee and
Yeah, collect my thoughts on Renee. Okay. All right, let's try this. Okay, so Stuber, that role was really tough to read because there was so much physical action happening in those scenes. If you guys have seen the movie, he's like in a car and he's like kicking out the window and then he gets shot and like all of it was like physical comedy. And so you give sides like that to an actor, it's just excruciating, and it's so hard to be like, what's the line? Do I fully commit to every single action, or do I just sort of ignore some of them, or do I muddle through, or like whatever? And it's so hard to like remember to act when you're remembering to do all of this physical stuff at the same time and have fun with it. And Renee was just, he just crushed it from like the very first time he came in. I think he came in once for us, and then he came back in for the director and the producers, and just like so funny, like just so on his game, like just truly a pleasure. And like that's the stuff that I absolutely love, like when someone comes in and it's just like, oh, I know who this dude is, I got you, and just like goes for it. It's like the absolute best. He was so good in that movie.
yeah, he was
Nice.
That was a really good one, actually.
Yeah, totally, so great.
You've
I know
you've casted
Go
a
ahead,
couple celebrities, right?
What's that?
You've like casted a couple celebrities, right? A couple notable people.
I guess so. Also,
that's
cast, it's not a word. The past tense of cast is cast. It's a huge pet peeve of mine. I'm sorry, I'm not scolding you.
That's just what I heard. That's we're asking some people about you, like, oh, she works with celebrities sometimes.
I mean, I guess. I don't know. I don't know any of these people. Like, I don't have friends that are celebrities. I think that's like a common misconception about casting directors too, is that like, we're just like, we know all these really cool people and places, and like we have access to people. Like, I have the same group of friends I always had. So like, yes, have I gotten to read and work with like incredible people whose work I admire and dream of? Absolutely. Like, I got to work on a pilot years ago. Oh my God, like I think 7 or 8 years ago, which is upsetting now, that Matt Damon executive produced, and he came to every single test and like hung out with us, and that was amazing. And like, you know, people who are just so cool. But that's, you know, it's sort of like why we all grow up loving movies, right? Like there's just sort of a star quality to it that we all love. So, and I still, you know, I mean, I don't get starstruck very often, but occasionally it'll happen and I'll be like, oh, no, I'm cool.
Cool.
That's how I feel when I see Renee. I just every time.
He's the best. I love Renee. I adore him. He's so great. I mean, like, what a good actor, and just like a cool dude.
He's really cool. He's really cool. I know you're working on a new project that I saw that Charlie Day's directing. Have you guys been pretty hands-on with that? You know, Is that his first film he's directing?
Yeah, it's Charlie's directorial debut, and he's starring in it, and he wrote it. We actually shot that movie over a year ago now, and I don't know what's going on with it. I haven't heard anything about where it's come out. I think they were going to Cannes or something was going on, but who knows with the world now. Charlie was the nicest guy in the world. He, you know, we did a bunch of sessions with him in the room, reading with certain people, and just like an absolute pleasure, normal human being, like, you know, just a love. And I am someone who admires his comedy so much. I think that he is a genius. And he was great. He was an absolute pleasure to work with. I really want to see that movie. That movie was insane. And I don't want to give anything away about it because it was so insane, but I have no idea what's happening to it, because we're left out of all of those conversations, right? Like once things are cast, like, you know, bye, we're on to the next thing. So, you know, things go into production, and that's when you guys form bonds with everybody and you make all your memories. Casting directors are way long gone by the time that happens. So we are the forgotten people.
That was interesting, because I was curious if you guys ever kind of follow up with things, how they're progressing, but I guess your job is done, right?
Yeah,
so you really have nothing to.
Yeah, I mean, we're so heavily a pre-production. Like, we're usually one of the first people hired on a production, because you have a script and then you need a cast. So by the time it gets to shooting, I mean, listen, if you're on a series, obviously you're on board while they're shooting and you're, you know, working on the next episode or whatever it is. But when it comes to big films like that, by the time they're up and running and going, you're usually, you know, onto the next one.
I've always been curious, how does a CD find work? Like, I know now if you're more established, it probably just comes to you all the time. But if you're kind of just up and coming and you're trying to get into this whole thing, like, how do you even get work, really?
It's a lot of relationships, the same way for you guys. A lot of it is producers and directors are very loyal to casting directors they've always worked with, and those are the people they call when they have a project. Or, you know, we put ourselves out there and we look for jobs, and we're scrappy the same way you guys are when you're looking for, I always tell actors, it's like you guys when you're looking for a rep, is sort of how we are. We have to sort of market and promote ourselves and, you know, meet with studios and networks and say, please keep us in mind. You know, if a producer, or let's say like a network, ABC picks up a pilot and they ask the producers, okay, do you have a casting director you want to work with, or are you open? They say, nope, we want to work with Jeannie McCarthy, call her and make a deal. And they say, okay, we'll do that. Or they say, no, we're open, we'd love to take meetings and meet with people. And so then, you know, hopefully we'll get a call and say, okay, we have this pilot, we want to set you up on a meeting with the producers. We'll go in and we'll meet, we'll have read the script, we'll maybe talk about ideas or lists, and see if, you know, if we jive also, because you just want to work with like-minded people who get you at the end of the day, and sort of go from there. Also, you know, I've been really fortunate. I've worked on a lot of shorts and thesis films from people who are getting their MFA in film, who are now directing movies and remembered me from casting their thesis film. And those are the people that are going to be making movies tomorrow. And they call and they say, hey, like, let's work together again. So you form relationships that way too. So again, it's all about, you know, being memorable, making relationships, and being a kind and professional human. But it's a hustle. And sometimes you don't know if you're not working with like a big casting office per se, it could be harder to kind of find and secure those jobs, because it's the same thing. Like, you know, you might be able to look up some of your favorite comedies and see they were all cast by Allison Jones, right? And so somebody else goes, oh, well, when I make my movie, I just want Allison Jones because she does all the big comedies. That's just what I want to do. So it's the same for actors, right? You're like, oh, I see Tom Cruise in everything, so like we want Tom Cruise. Like, you're used to seeing sort of the same names over and over again. So it makes it hard. It makes it hard for some of the younger casting directors to sort of come up and establish their place. Not impossible, but it's, you know, still the grind. Everybody's out there on their grind, man. Like, doing the best we can.
I get it. You're trying to cut out all the competition. I get it.
Yeah, totally.
Will you give a student a better rate, like for their MFA film, or is it all the same?
It depends. It's usually all the same. I don't do a lot of them anymore, to be very honest, but yeah, it depends.
They gotta pay. They come to you for the quality cast.
Yeah.
You gotta pay the same.
Listen, I mean, it depends.
Austin was curious because he's casting a film and he really was going to ask you. I'm
not a student. I'm not a student.
We can talk.
Okay, cool. As we get to like final questions, I have a very specific one. So if you laughed at that other one, then you might laugh at this one. But,
oh, good.
But it's fine. It's very specific. If, like, when I'm in the room for a casting director or anybody, obviously the casting director will ask the question, do you have any questions to the actor? And I'm not asking like what's a fake question I could ask, but like I always feel sort of negative responding, like, oh, nope, good to go or whatever.
Nope. Don't feel negative. It's not a test. It's literally a moment for you to get some clarity, should you need some clarity, because so many people get in and they're afraid to ask. They're afraid they're going to look stupid, or they're afraid they're going to overstep or whatever it is. So it's literally just an opportunity to clear the air, and it is perfectly fine to say, nope, I'm all good, and move on. We do not have a second thought about that. However, if you start asking questions just for the sake of asking questions, that will also be really obvious. And like, that's, again, not what we're there for. Like, this is about, like, we are your cheerleader. We want you to get the job. And so we want to be able to clarify anything that will be helpful to you in that moment, whether it's about the show or even if it's about the timeline or whatever it is. It's a genuine question. So if you genuinely don't have a question, you can just say, oh no, I'm all good, thank you. The end. the end of interaction.
All right, cool.
Now you know for future reference. Oh.
It's not a test. All right,
not
good.
a test. That's not a test, and your slate is also not a test. If I have one more actor complain to me about slates and go crazy over slates, I swear to God, a slate is bookkeeping to us. You know what I mean? A slate is not going to get you a job, and it's not going to not get you a job. If your scene is brilliant and your slate, you didn't follow the directions, that's not going to not get you to work. It's literally bookkeeping to us. Your name, so we know how to pronounce it, and so that we make sure we have the right tape. Your height, because that's generally information that we need about, like, when we're matching people. If somebody's 6'7", that's probably good information to have. Your location, a lot of the times we need to know where you are. Like, literally, it is just bookkeeping for casting. And people get so crazy about it and just like overthink it, or like, do I have to be in the same outfit? Do I have to be in the same setup? Like, what if I'm in a different room? No, have one good slate that you just tack on to the end of every scene you do. Like, you don't have to keep reslating every single time. You just need the information that's requested in that specific self-tape. So just read the directions is all.
Cool.
Yeah.
I have a specific question that just kind of sparked from something you just said right now. So I was up for a role for a series on Paramount, and I got a call back for it. Basically did the same thing essentially, and they had me change some things in the room. Did that. Then they told me they wanted me to come back for a third audition. And then I was kind of thinking like, well, what else do they want to see? You know what I mean? And then I started thinking like, should I dress differently? Should I try something else? Do something that they didn't see in the scene? Because they've already seen like these other versions of it. And I was kind of like, I guess, doubting myself in a sense. They ended up not doing a third audition, but I was just kind of curious, like in that situation, like it kind of felt like, well, what else is there to show you guys? Like I've already done like these two different things. Like, should I do something completely different? Or
don't do something completely different. It could be just that they're narrowing down and they want to see you live. It could be that a producer wanted to be in the room who couldn't be there the last time, and they just want to like feel the live energy and see the people in person. I wouldn't change anything. They're calling you back because they like the work that you did, and they're responding to the things that you did in the room. So if you go in there making some really new, bold choice, it's going to throw them off and be like, whoa, what the hell happened? If they gave you specific redirection, let's say, that kind of changed the intent of the scene last time, you can ask before you go in and say like, hey, Johnny, they tweaked the scene and Johnny did it more angry, and at first he was doing it really more devastated. Do you know which version they were really kind of looking to see this time? And let the casting office say, oh, they're actually going for that more angry version that we readjusted to. Can you have him make sure that he's like prepared to do it that way? That's totally an acceptable question to ask, and so that you're mentally prepared to go in there and do whatever it is you're going to do. But I wouldn't go in making any different choices. It's okay. Usually by that time just like down to brass tacks. That means they're just trying to make a final decision depending on what it's for, and they just need to see it again. And it's exhausting. By the way, we hate doing that to you guys. Like, we don't want to make you come back again and again and again, because it sucks for us and it sucks for you. So if we can avoid it somehow, we're gonna. And it sounds like they ended up avoiding it. It ended up not happening, right? So, you know, we want it to be the least painful experience in the world, but don't second guess yourself. If you're being brought back, you're being brought back because they like what you did. So stick to that.
Yeah, I was just curious because I was like, it seemed like the same people were in the room again. And I was like, well, you guys already saw that. You have the tape. And I'm like, I don't, you know what I mean? Like, it was kind of like, I'm going to show you again. Like, they might be like, we've already seen this, buddy. Like, let's do something else. You know, so I wasn't sure.
Yeah, obviously I can't speak for the project because I don't know, but like, maybe something happened with the tape. Maybe there was, you know, tweaks to the scene that they were going to give you on the fly to see how you handled it. Maybe they were going to end up chem reading you and they didn't want to, you know what I mean? Like, it could be a litany of things that we obviously just won't know the answer to. You know, I also worked on a Facebook watch series called Sorry for Your Loss. And our producers really loved being in the room for the final takes for big guest stars. They wanted to see everybody on tape. And then for like the 4 or 5 finalists, let's call them, for like the bigger guest star roles, even if they were just in one episode, they just wanted to feel the experience of being in the room with those people. but they didn't want to like sit through the whole audition process. They just like wanted it narrowed down to that. So a lot of the time on that show, almost every episode, we would go up to CBS Radford after we'd already had auditions in our office, and we'd bring back these like 4 or 5 or 6 people just to come in and do it live for the producers, just to see how they felt. And sometimes they felt the exact same way that they did on tape. Sometimes it changed the way that they feel having the experience with the person live in the room. For them, it was really important to do that. Not every office, obviously, and project operates that way. It's just sort of whatever is preferable to that creative team. So obviously, you know, it's annoying for you guys, but if you want the job, sometimes you got to jump through the hoops, and that's life, babe, you know?
Yeah. Well, I think what you proved today is I'm going to quit. So thank you for this enlightening. I'm feeling enlightened now.
More for Renee.
I know, right? Damn it, Renee. I only had one more question, but if you guys want to ask anything, go ahead.
I was going to say great podcast, but Johnny, close us out.
The last question I was just going to ask you, just out of pure curiosity, is you've obviously done a lot of things. So what are you most proud of?
Oh boy.
Her 2-year-old.
Yeah, I was gonna say that actually.
All right, then there we go.
No, but career-wise, career.
I am proud of being a mom with a career, especially a demanding 24/7 career, and I am still struggling daily on how to balance that, because this job demands so much of you, and now I have to give 100% of myself to being a mom and 100% of myself to working, and it is exhausting and it's constantly changing. But I'm making it work, and I feel like today I'm making it work. Tomorrow, who knows? But you know, it's exhausting. So I am proud of that for sure. But if we're like talking like accolade wise or like whatever wise, you know, a couple years ago, Erica Bream and we cast this theater festival every year together at the Blank Theater. It's a national playwriting competition for teenagers, for kids 19 years old and younger. They pick 12 winners every year, and they fly those kids out to LA. We produce their plays every summer. And a couple years ago, Erica and I won an Artios Award for our work on that play festival. And it was just awesome. Like a really wonderful, beautiful moment. 1, to be like recognized by our peers was incredible. 2, to be recognized for theater, which like in LA is like unheard of, right? Like people actually acknowledging theater. And 3, to be recognized for that festival was just really incredible, because it's very, very near and dear to mine and Erica's hearts, and it doesn't look like it's happening this year, obviously. So we're trying to figure out a different way to bring those plays to some kind of life, because they did pick 12 winners. So that was like a very truly cool moment for me. That was something I never thought I would be winning an Artios Award, because that's sort of the highest honor we have. We don't have an Oscar. I mean, we have an Emmy, which is obviously amazing too, but their casting is sort of a forgotten about craft. So we sort of made these awards to honor ourselves, and it was really, really, truly a really amazing honor, to the point where Eric and I both like blacked out when we got up on the stage to accept the award, and just like giggled, and we're like, "This is so nice, thank you," and left, because we really didn't know what to say.
I thought you were gonna say you blacked out like in the after party after you were celebrating. No. I was like, oh well, okay.
Ain't like that.
That was. Did you guys have any other questions? That was all for me.
I mean, I loved it. This was a great podcast. Yeah, Cara, you're awesome. Where can our audience find you? Like, if you want to.
Or not find you.
Welcome to find me. Or not find me. I'm nowhere. You can find me on Twitter and on Instagram at CCR Casting. And then I'm also, my website is ccrcasting.com. And then basically any method through there, you can find me. If you're at any of those places, you know how to contact me. So do it. Contact me. I dare you.
Boom.
Thank you so much for hanging out with us. Appreciate it.
Of course. And thank you for asking me. It was really a pleasure.